Welcome to the space where creators have aligned a positive and intellectual collab of open minds. For sharing and learning from one another, it's a vibe. ReadswithRosa podcast on the mic. Subscribe, educator spitting bars. I guess you didn't know I'm multifaceted and humble, checking off life goals. The classroom is my comfort zone where I plant and sow seeds of knowledge, compassion, empathy, and hope. Reading is the key to unlocking your potential. Countless benefits, including cognitive and mental. Regardless of the genre, books are highly influential. Go get yours, I'll get mine. Making strides, monumental. Come rock with me and get down to this new jam. Reaching out to my friends, I had a very simple plan. Educate the masses through books and life lessons. It's a grand slam. I'm out. Talo falava, malo elele, and kia ora. Welcome to the Reads with Rosa podcast. Today's guest has deep roots in Polynesia with his Tongan, Hawaiian, and Maori ancestry. He was taught the art of Polynesian dance, herbal medicine, and Pacific folklore from a very young age. He is an educator, a musician, and an advocate for oceanic history and social justice. Joining us from Hawaii, it is my honor to introduce to the show Kiliona Palauni. Welcome, brother.
Aloha.
It's lovely to have you here. How are you? How are things on your side of the world?
Really good. Nice chilly day here in Hawaii. So can't complain. It's been raining all morning.
Oh, but yeah. Well, what's this? I mean, you guys didn't have like winter season, do you?
Just rainy season.
Just rainy season. Well, it's good to have you here. I appreciate it. I appreciate this so much. I would give you an opportunity just to kind of like shout out intro, shout out your villages of people.
Malo lele. Aloha. Yeah, I'm Tongan, Maori, Hawaiian. My mom's family homesteads in Molokai, but roots go back to Hawaii Island, predominantly. Let me turn that off. To the Puna district on Hawaii Island. My father's line, the Maori side, the iwi is the Ngātaua and Te Atua, I guess the Bay of Plenty, I should say. So that's where they are, down by, I think, Matata area. Yeah.
Wow.
And then my Tongan lines, really just roots to Hapai for the most part, and then some up to regions of Va'ava'u. Yeah.
That's cool. So for all the followers who are watching or perhaps listening, your cousin is on the Reads with Rosa podcast. Check him out. It's lovely to have you, bro. Thank you for that. Man, that is, so many layers to your identity. When you were younger and at school, how did you explain all of that to people, or were you asked, where are you from? Where do you come from?
Yeah, I was actually raised in the diaspora. My mother was going to pharmacy school in Idaho, and so I was born in Idaho, in this small town that was only the cheapest hospital they could find in the area. So I was born in this tiny little dinky town and raised over there. And so for the most part, we lived right on the border of a Native American reservation of, I believe it was Shoshone and Bannock natives. And there's a lot of Hispanics over there too. We were probably the only Pacific Island family anywhere near there. So, actually growing up, everybody just thought I was Hispanic or Native American. And so I would have to explain where I was from, but honestly, no one really understood. Unless I said Hawaii, then they go, "Oh yeah, the tropical island." And
Right.
that was about it.
So at your schools, where you grew up, were you taught about the First Nations people? Like, were you learning about that and that history, that part of American history in your classes, in your schools, or not?
Minimally. So we lived right on the border, and I actually went to, man, my bun's annoying me. I actually went to a Western school, not really a native one. So we had a few Native American students in our classes, but the teachers were all predominantly, Western Eurocentric educators. And so it was very minimal, and it was very Western bias, I would say. But my mom and my dad both kind of worked on and off on the rest. So um, not at school, but outside of school, we were able to go to a lot of like powwow and cultural things that they put on. So I
Mm,
learned a bit when I was young about Native American things, but it wasn't through my K through 12 experience.
mm. And were you a reader? What kind of books do you remember from, you know, younger days when you were at school?
I actually struggled a lot with like dyslexia and such, and I wasn't much of a reader. I don't think I read my first chapter book that was over like 10 pages really until I was in fourth grade, and it was a really big
Mm.
deal because it was like a 106-page book. I think it was called like Arnold Applesauce. It was
Some random book
yeah.
like
No, I was not a reader. I read really slow, and
Mm,
I was really embarrassed to read out loud.
mm,
And our school always did what they call popcorn reading, where you just kind of pick one student after another. And every time
mm,
when it got to me and I would stumble on a word, I would really get self-conscious that kids would, know because I was that kid that was always pulled out of class and taken to like special ed classes, and they would
mm,
literally stop the middle of class and just be like, you, and you, and like you'd have to stand up and walk, do the walk of shame to go to your special ed class. And so um, kids already knew that I wasn't as intelligent in the sense academically
mm,
when it came to Western education, and so I feel like reading was just an emphasis on the fact that I was behind. So I was not a reader. I definitely was not a reader really until I would say college. And
mm,
when I say college, I went back to college. So
mm.
reading wasn't a thing for me until I was in my late 20s.
Wow. So, in terms of home life and in terms of, these different parts of your identity and culture, how were you learning that in the home, uh, language wise, or, through stories from mom and dad?
Mom pretty much lost her language when her father never taught her. So she never spoke Hawaiian at all because she just didn't know how. He never, grandpa never spoke to her. My dad spoke a lot of Tongan, but he never made it a point to teach us Tongan. So we just kind of picked up the snippets that we could, me and my brother and sister,
Mm.
um, around the house or around his family, because he really wouldn't speak a whole lot unless it was kind of like anger. He would tell us, "Hey, hurry up," or click, whatever. But it was minimal, minimal. Um, so what happened is because we were in the diaspora, I think my parents kind of overcompensated in other ways, and
Mm,
so because they couldn't, they didn't teach us language, they taught us dance and histories,
mm,
things like that. And so my mom really, taught us everything she could about what she remembers of Hawaii, and then my dad would tell us, stories, and next thing you know, they were teaching us songs, and then we started getting hired as a little family luau, and we
oh,
would go around the Mountain West and put on luau's and dance. And so really quickly we learned dance after dance after dance after dance of all the different cultures, and so it was just kind of this mini Polynesian Cultural Center, cruising around Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, and Montana. But one of my favorite things was we were the only family, even out of the ones in Utah, of that we, that had a big enough yard from on my Tongan side too. So we actually had an umu or imu in the backyard where we would cook traditionally, and that was something I really remember was learning how to cook Polynesian style in the yard. Even in the dead of winter, it'd be snowing, and there we were out there cooking, roasting
wow.
pigs in the ground. And every once in a while, it was really special. They would pull out the kava, and Samoan families would come from afar, and they'd have a little kava there and play music and tell stories. And that was really moving for me, and a really big moment in my life that kind of, I think, shaped the direction I went in for the remainder of my life.
Mm. And you mentioned you went back to college, but before that, what were you dreaming about? Like, were you dreaming about going abroad? Were you dreaming about working? I mean, what younger what were you wanting to do?
Little kid, was your age old fireman
Mm,
policeman thing. But I think once I started getting a little older, it became, extreme sports, skateboarding,
Oh.
surfing things. And then, you know, had like I fell back into music. I always had a love for music. And then so more into high school, it just be, ninth grade. So 13, 14-ish on, he was a musician. I wanted to be a touring
Mm.
musician. And I pushed that really hard, and I put out a couple music albums, and we hit the road a few times, and did 20, 30-day tours around. And that was my life until my mid-20s, I would say.
Wow. Was college a reality for you? What I mean is like, did you have other cousins or, family members who had gone before you that you kind of looked up to and thought, one day I'm going to get there?
My mom went to school.
Mm,
My dad never did. Um, he just did high school, and that was about it. Um, my brother and sister. My sister went for a little while and dropped out. My brother never went. We were kind of the older cousins of the groups on both sides of the family,
mm,
so no cousins were before us. Um, and so, other than my mom, it was just kind of grandparents on my mom's side,
mm,
were college graduates.
mm. Now as a parent yourself, in New Zealand they have those Pacifica language weeks, Pacific Island language weeks, right? So, there's always a lot of talk around language revitalization, growing our languages and making sure we're passing those stories down and teaching the younger generation. What are your thoughts on this in terms of, your experiences now as a parent?
Um, being that we never had a lot of language around the house
Mm,
other than English, I always wanted to speak Tongan or Hawaiian. I begged my dad to teach me. It just never really happened. He worked a lot, so I can't even blame
mm,
him. He was working 3 jobs. He was never home, and when he was home, it was just sleep. Um, but I always wanted to learn a Pacific language, and that was such a vital thing in my life. So when I went back to college at like 26, I
mm,
made it a point to at least take Hawaiian classes. I wanted to take Tongan classes, but the school I was at only had Hawaiian, and by the time I got to the school with Tongan, um, it was, I was already like, I'm on course to graduate. I don't want to spend more time here than I have to. But for my daughter, I make it a point to kind of live vicariously through her.
mm.
I never had a language rooted in my life like that. The first thing I did was convince my wife that we were going to put her in immersion school. And
Oh,
so, she went to immersion preschool. She's about to graduate from there and go to immersion kindergarten in Hawaiian. And so she'll be the first fluent Hawaiian speaker, I think, from my Hawaiian side in about 2 generations.
wow. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I was thinking like because you mentioned like Tongan classes and Hawaiian language classes. So is it common from your experiences or from hearing from other people that there are language classes offered like Hawaiian, Tongan, Samoan at college level, or it just depends on the area of the
It's all
US?
regional. It's all regional. So like
Mm,
in Salt Lake City, Utah now, and maybe even BYU, they might offer like a Tongan or Samoan course. If enough kids
mm,
sign up, the course will continue. If not enough kids will sign up, they'll drop the course. In Hawaii, um, pretty much any majority of the bachelor's degrees, you have to at least have 2 years of like a foreign language.
mm,
And so at the community college level, they offer Hawaiian, Olelo Hawaii, and then at the university level, like University of Hawaii, Manoa, and such, they offer Samoan, Tongan, um, a couple other Pacific Island languages, and then if they have a guest resident, they'll offer Te Reo Maori. And so one of the
mm.
years I was there, they had Maori courses, and I was like super excited about it, but again, it just didn't align with my schedule to take it.
Mm. Have you been to New Zealand?
Only
Uh,
once,
okay.
about
And what are
11
your
years.
what are your memories of New Zealand at that time?
I mean, it wasn't long enough. By the time
Mm.
I got to Auckland, I had already blown through all my money. Um, I kind of just went on a random trip after
Yeah.
a hard breakup, and
Mm.
so I went to Australia, and then randomly went to Fiji and visited family there, and then went to Tonga and visited
Oh.
Tonga, and then finally on my way back, I was like, oh, I'll stop in Auckland. But by the time I got there, I probably had $120 in my pocket.
As you do, as you do. When did you decide that education was, being an educator was the path that you wanted to take? Because I read that you did the Teach America. Okay, you're laughing. I don't know. Is that a good laugh? Like, please explain the laughter, or is that I don't know. Are you mocking right now? I don't know.
No, I stumbled into teaching, honestly.
You stumbled.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so it wasn't even on my radar, to be honest with you.
Mm.
While I was in Hawaii, going to school, I was doing a lot of like cultural historical tour guide work, just to kind of make ends meet because it was a flexible time. And I was getting my degree, and I was in my last year of school, second to last semester, and this girl just like burst into my political science of Hawaii class and was like, "Does anybody want to be a teacher?" Nobody raised their hands, and I'm just kind of like, I'll take your brochure, because it was honestly, I kind of felt bad that nobody took her brochure. So I was like, I'll take
Mm.
your brochure. And I read it over, and I I was like, I don't even know what the hell Teach for America is. I really had no idea, because my realm of education and academia was just like, I'm just gonna get a degree in Pacific Island Studies because like that's what I want to do.
Mm.
And so I came home, and I told it was my girlfriend at the time. Wait, actually, no, we were married. I told my wife at the time, um, hey, I think I might apply for this thing, and she just kind of laughed at me, like, oh, good luck. Like, I had a lot of friends from like Ivy schools submit for that, and none of them got in. So good luck. Like, I don't mean to be a jerk, but like, don't get your hopes up. And I did, and I went through the whole rigmarole of it, and they hired me, and
Oh.
sent me to training, and then brought me back and placed me at a school in the west side of Hawaii. And first 2 years were hell, I'll be real, but I fell in love with educating people. It was
Mm.
something, and I think it kind of hand in hand, it kind of walked me there by being a tour guide first. It
Mm.
kind of showed me how I can get from point A to point B, and teaching people in a fun way that keeps them entertained. Um, and like I said, I fell into it. I stumbled into it. It wasn't something that I really even had an eye out for. But now
Mm.
that I'm in it, I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
My friend Emma, she knows you. She was like, "Oh, he's so cool." She did Teach America too, so she was just like, "Oh, you gotta get him on the show. He's so cool. Please get him on the." I was just like, "Okay," and I think that's when I started following you a while back. But she also, did that program as well, and so here we are. So, what age group are you at? A high school or a middle school? Where are you? What
Um,
school are you teaching at?
right now, I teach eighth grade.
Okay.
And it's at my dream school. I've taught all through. I've taught eighth through seventh, really, seventh grade through 12th
Mm.
grade here. Everything from high school American studies to
Oh.
Polynesian music, Hawaiian music, to now I'm teaching American history. But again, it's eighth grade, and it's through the eyes of indigeneity. So it's really fun.
Mm.
But I teach at a school on the leeward coast of Oahu, um, in a school called Kawaihona Okana'awao, and we're a Hawaiian culturally focused charter school. And when they say Hawaiian culturally focused, they are very, very adamant on that.
Mm.
I say that respectfully, because a lot of other schools aren't. They just kind of do it for grants and funding. But this school, my goodness, if you're
Mm.
not really pushing culture into the lessons and doing it from an indigenous perspective, then they don't really want you there. And so for me, I tell my coworkers all the time, it's the Hawaiian Hogwarts.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
okay.
magical. Right outside my room, we have a traditional hale Hawaiian house, and then literally
Oh,
next to my room is a giant imu where we cook the pigs. Then right behind my room, we have huge gardens, and then the open ocean that
oh.
we fish from. So like, it's like the kids like literally learning from the land. It's incredible.
Man, for a minute there, I thought you were gonna say there was a Hawaiian version of Quidditch as you look out the window or something. I was like, "Bro, yeah, say it. Yeah, sure. That's awesome." Man, that's in terms of the student population. Is it a mixture of the teachers? Do students see teachers that look like them? Sorry, that's what I'm
God,
trying to
yeah.
say.
God, yeah. And that was so vital for me.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I think the entire school has 3 staff that aren't Pacific Islander, maybe 4 staff, that's it. Almost every single teacher there is Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. And so,
Mm.
there's a couple Samoans, a couple Samoan Hawaiian, and then, like, almost the entire staff and student body are Hawaiian. And, it's crazy. It's crazy to see. I remember I went to the first staff meeting, I was looking around the room when I first got there, and I was like, "This doesn't even seem real." Like, that's another reason. I
Yeah.
was like, "This is like Hogwarts. It's all these magical wizards in this space with me. How is this even possible?" Because I never worked at a school that was predominantly brown. I never had
Mm.
a school that I went through, K through college, that was predominantly brown. I never even had a non-white educator
Mm.
until I went to college. That's insane. Actually, no, I had one who was my
Wow.
Japanese teacher, and he taught us Japanese. That's it. The only one. So
Man, do you deal with do you find that because teachers reflect the student population that you still have to deal with behavioral management, or is it a little bit different? Like what's I'm so curious about that.
I mean, of course, there's always behavioral management, and the reason is, I would say, is because these kids don't know different. A lot of these
Mm,
kids have been educated at the school K through 8. A lot of these kids went to school similar, and they don't know what a school is without Pacific Island educators. They just
wow,
don't. And so for them, it's the norm. They don't understand that this is very unique. And
man.
so
So what are some strategies that you use to help build rapport with your learners? Uh, mm,
I just have fun with them. Honestly,
mm,
if they shoot off, I shoot off back and, give them crap back. And they like me because I'm real with them.
mm,
They tease me, I tease them. It's They understand that I'm their teacher, and that there needs to be a level of respect and authority in that. But they also understand that, like, I'm not gonna be massively strict, but I'm still gonna at least hold a rigor and hold them accountable. And
mm,
but I think that I've built a space in my classroom where there's a mutual respect, and they understand, like, oh, we don't want to let Kumu down. He's the cool and fun one. He's the one that makes learning exciting. And so they hold themselves a little bit more accountable because of that. And when they get out of line, they get checked real quick and
mm.
check themselves now. Like, they'll check each other. Shut up! You're making Kumu angry.
Mm,
And
man,
go
where
ahead.
do your students mostly when they leave your school, where do you see most of them heading off to? Is it to, you know, yeah, in terms of like the next step for
Well, we
them?
only go up to 8th grade right now. We're trying to push
Mm,
high schools, but for now we're only 8th.
mm,
So they just go. A lot of them go to any school around here.
mm.
Some go back to public schools. Some go to private
Ah,
institutions. Others try to apply for, like, good charter schools or, like, good private
mm,
schools. Um, this kind of sad because this is like the break off point where all the kids that have been together for maybe 7, 8 years
mm,
go their separate ways. Um, so it can be kind of a sad moment, as this is the last year that they're together in a sense.
mm. Is the head of your school also um, Polynesian?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he's Native Hawaiian. He's actually a moko practitioner, a cacao practitioner.
Oh.
So he does a lot of traditional Hawaiian cacao. And he's also a professional musician. So he has a lot of, like, Hawaiian albums out, and
Huh.
um, he's a really strong advocate for Olala Hawaii, fluent speaker of the Hawaiian language. Um,
Mm,
I don't know where the hell he found the time to put all that together in such a short life. Every time I think about his accomplishments, I kind of wonder, like, oh, I'm like 36 and I'm nowhere
mm.
near that. And he got a PhD. I'm like, "Ah, I'm behind."
Oh,
um, yeah, it's
man.
awesome having that, because prior to him, I never really had, like, a real Pacific Island boss,
Mm.
let alone admin that was at that level of um, competence and understanding of what the community really needed. And it's a night and day difference what he does for us compared to other administrators I've been under.
I'm so intrigued about the school. I need to Google it or something. I think that's what I'm going to do after this.
Yeah,
I so
Kavaihona,
want to know more.
Kavaihona Okana Oau. Just we call it Kavaihona PCS. Yeah.
Oh, you call yourself an oceanic history nerd. Where did this love for oceanic history come from? You said you really got into reading. Was it when you were back in college? Is that where it kind of grew from, or is it really just going right back to mum
Mm.
and dad and that storytelling and the music and the art? And
Well, when it comes to oceanic stuff, it all started with the luau's, I would say, and
mm,
just my dad telling me stories of growing up in Toa, and my mom spending parts of her childhood in Molokai. Um, a lot of my intrigue came from that. My dad worked for Delta, and so we flew free. So we were those like brats that if the seats were open, would take a free flight back to Hawaii. So
mm,
we were in Hawaii almost every month. Um, and I fell in love with it. Anytime I got time to spend with my Tongan grandparents or my Hawaiian great uncle, were times that I would just cherish. And all the other cousins and siblings were kind of like, "Oh, this is boring," and I'm over there like, tell me more," and it just never stopped. I loved it and I wanted it more and more and more and more, and I wanted to go to college, but in the States at the time when I graduated in 2005, I couldn't find a Pacific Island Studies program. And then when I was in my mid 20s, I realized that they had them in Hawaii and Aotearoa. I
mm,
was like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And so, I put myself, I would always read what I could about that. I wasn't a reader, but if it
mm,
was around Polynesia, you bet, like I was engulfed in anything I could find. So
mm,
learning what I could through academia and university was really moving for me, and a real big opportunity for me to really like dive into that realm that I was just craving so badly. And I got my degree in Pacific Island Studies, and honestly, I wish I could have gone longer, but it only went up
mm,
to a master's, and I did my master's in a different program. But I'm waiting, I guess, to see if there's ever a PhD program in Pacific Island Studies.
mm,
That'd just be, you know, the most amazing thing to think about. I don't know what it is.
mm,
I'm always hungry to learn more, and there's never enough. And the realm of academia is only so deep before you have to go find it yourself. You
mm,
know, go and join those kalapu and sit around the whaikawa, while they
mm,
whaikawa, hear the stories from the elders and the community members, and there's multiple forms of knowledge. It's just a matter of finding the spaces to seek it and learn it. And that's where I'm finding myself in that transition point where I want to know it all, even the female sides of things and the male sides of things, which I know is taboo in our
mm.
culture. But I just want that knowledge. It's really weird. My Tongan side laughs because they see me over there like pounding kapa, and, women's work. But I want to know the process so that when my
Mm,
mom is of age, I can teach her those skills that
mm,
you know no other woman in my life knows how to teach her. And so step up and
mm.
do that duality of the male and female roles of Oceania too. So
Are there
yeah.
opportunities for you to still teach hula, or there are other practitioners and, people that who do that? I was just thinking about your daughter, so
you know, we go to Maikumu, and we used to go twice a week, and we're probably, I think, this month, now that's February, keep forgetting it's February. We're going to start going back this Tuesday,
mm,
and we do. She'll learn hula from my hula kumu. There's two of them there, a couple, and so I'm really excited for that. She doesn't like to learn a lot from me, my daughter. She's only 4, so like I try to teach her things, and she's just like, no, no. But if somebody
no.
else teaches her, she's like, oh, okay, cool, you know.
You're someone who utilizes social media. Uh, in terms of empowerment, in terms of advocacy, activism, to educate people. Uh, yeah, tell us about that. Tell us, because you have so many great videos, very informative, like really educational stuff. Like I look at them and I'm like, man, I didn't even know that. So what has that experience been like for you? Are there people who kind of come for you and call you out and things like that? Or has it generally been a really, safe space, good experience so far?
I'm really glad that you asked that one, actually, because for the longest time, I was just kind of on Instagram and Facebook, and I would just kind of post more so like a picture with a story underneath and the bio of it, or just like, type out and then screenshot a paragraph of like a, story or something, or a piece of information. And I found that it wasn't hitting the craving that I wanted to when it came to getting information out. And with Oceania being so undertold and under-respected and so overlooked, I wanted to divulge all this information that I had, but a huge part of me hit that wall of what is the word for that? Imposter syndrome.
Mm,
It took me a while to really understand what that even was, but that feeling that you can be something but never feel like a good enough of that
right.
something. And so I feared that like I would spill out this information, and then these academics or these like cultural people would come after me and be like, that's not how it is, and you don't even know what you're talking about, and that's only half the story. And I sat on that for probably a good year or two, and then one day I just I said, I'm gonna just try it. I'm gonna make a TikTok, and I'm gonna kind of see how this goes. So I started telling some of the untold stories of Oceania, and things that people don't really understand or don't really know. Like when we killed Cook in Hawaii, we didn't eat him. And a lot of people in Western culture were like, "Oh, you ate him," but like, no. I could tell a story about us making his hands into fly swatters, and people are like, "What? How did that even happen?" And it's just little things like that. The first documentation of cannibalism in Oceania was actually Magellan's crew eating us. And it's just like, getting those stories out is so vital, because what I find is even Pacific Islanders look down on ourselves for those aspects of our culture of, some of our people being cannibals, as if that's something so barbaric and animalistic, when in all reality, other cultures were doing it too. And they just kind of put it on us as it was a massive taboo. But to answer the second part of that, I expected a lot of backlash, and I was afraid of it at first. But then I realized the majority of the backlash I would receive from most people was honestly coming from an incredible amount of ignorance on the topics. And so it was just people that would get angry over something that really wasn't the historical fact, but something that bothered them within what I said. I don't like the way you said all Christians. I'm like, well, I didn't mean Christianity as an entity. I meant it as this capsule that did something to our people, in a sense, something like that. Or the few times the Pacific Islanders have reached out, it's almost always in support. But I have had a few people backlash and be like, you're not Maori enough to talk on Maori matters. Matter that you got the moko and you do your whakapapa and blah blah blah. That's not what matters. You're not here living the culture. You can't talk about it. And for me, it's like I understand that in a minutely, I should say. But at the end of the day, I'm not really diving into the culture. I'm diving into historical references about the people.
Yeah, something that you speak to, that you really raise awareness, of to people on your videos is modern settler colonialism in Hawaii. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit on this, because this is where I learn stuff that I didn't know, is from these videos. And I'm like, oh, it's so interesting, because it's just a different perspective, because obviously the Western perspective and Western narratives are always, they get the spotlight. But I'm like, yay, someone is actually putting this content together, getting, telling us, informing us. It's so important.
Well, I think the Maori and the Hawaiians are really the only two that can really talk on that matter to that level
Mm,
of occupation, because a lot of our other island brothers and sisters, I mean, I guess the Tahitians too, but a lot of our other brothers and
mm,
sisters in the Pacific have gained their sovereignty back in some form, um, which has its own colonial issues and its own issues in its own right. So I'm not even going to begin to talk on that. But for
mm,
Hawaii, um, you know, I just saw so much misinformation being passed around about the region, and I've seen so many people moving here that come with that blissful ignorance that if I don't know it, then I can still sleep at night. But once I
mm,
know it, then I know that I'm a problem in this space. And so,
mm,
it's blissful to not understand and not know the issues you're causing in that place. And so Hawaii is this melting pot of self-righteousness, I should say, of people that come here to think they're doing something for the better, but just their very existence in this place. And I know it sounds wrong, but it it it's detrimental to the
mm,
indigenous people of this space, because we're now at a position of a housing crisis that it's expanded the price median house price of homes here to well over $1 million American, and we just can't afford it. Um, we are underpaid. We're not hired usually for those bigger positions. They outsource the six-figure jobs to people they bring in from the continental US or somewhere else. And so we're literally being priced out. There's today more indigenous Hawaiians living outside of the Hawaiian archipelago than living within the Hawaiian archipelago. And those that
mm,
live within is incredibly minute amount of us, and we still make up a significant part of the homeless population and the incarcerated. And so there's just so much reality that needs to be told, but people just don't want to hear it.
mm. Are there other activists like yourself, other people like yourself who are out there, telling these stories and educating people about this? Or
Of course, there's plenty of them, and I mean, some of them are way better at it than I am, and way more
mm,
knowledgeable and have a finesse about it, um, than I do in particular. Um, this is something new to me to really just kind of like say it at such a grand level, I should say. I didn't what first off, I didn't realize my TikTok would kind of blow up the way it did at
mm,
first. I was expecting, maybe 10, 20 followers here and there. And the next thing I
mm,
know, it was like 20,000 followers. I was like, oh crap. And so it was something that kind of snuck up on me. But a lot of there are a lot of other people that push for this, and they have really profound videos too. And I think really what it comes down to is just the more the merrier. We just need
mm,
so many out there pushing this information and spreading the truth about the occupation and how America acquired this place, and how detrimental it's been having them occupy this place, um, because for so long people didn't say anything, and now it's like we're just barely being awoken to the
mm,
atrocities that have plagued Hawaii for so long.
mm. Are people writing books about the occupation or the history,
Of course,
about the indigenous peoples? Like, are there a lot of resources out there still being written?
of course. Um, what was it called? A Nation Rising, I believe, was one
Mm,
that came out a few years ago. That's really good about talking about activism around colonial issues in Hawaii. Um, Dr. Keanu Sai, a couple of years back, he did his doctorate, and I believe his dissertation ended up becoming a published book. They call it Ua Mau um, and that book is all about the legality of the illegal overthrow, and kind of breaks it down through Hawaiian law, American law, and international law, I believe. It's been a
mm,
couple of years since I read that one. Yeah, there's plenty. There's tons of content around it.
mm,
But the issue is a lot of it's really academic, which is a turnoff to
mm,
the average reader. And that's another reason why I thought that social media was such a good outlet, is it pulls those people in that don't want to read, and they'll sit there and listen to you for 3 minutes, um,
mm.
explain a situation.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about further another question about resources and books in schools. Like, for example, in your school, students, are there texts or books where they can kind of learn about this? Obviously, there are many Polynesian teachers, Indigenous teachers in the school, but, storytelling, but through resources and books, is it available for students, or is it not so much? We need more.
I mean, we always need more. But
Mm,
yeah, we have a plethora of books that are age appropriate.
mm,
A really cool one is Kamehameha Schools put a series out about the Hawaiian Ali'i and the Hawaiian Royals. And they're like, little like 80-page books with like, a paragraph, if even that, maybe 2, 3 sentences per page that kind of give a snippet into, a really vague overlook of their life, but they're phenomenal for teaching, you know, a crash course of that royal's life. And those are phenomenal. Not only do we have class copies, but we also you can find them digitally on a website called Ulukau,
okay.
ulukau.org, I believe, is a huge online library of Hawaiian curriculum and Hawaiian content. You can even find old Hawaiian Nupepa or Hawaiian newspapers. And if you can speak, you can literally, read papers from 100 years ago, 150 years ago.
Oh.
And that's really cool. And so, yeah, it's out there. It's just a matter of knowing it and finding it and how to utilize it.
For all our listeners, those who are watching this video, these links, websites will be posted in the bio. It will also tell you how you can follow Kiliona and support his work of activism that he's doing on social media. So please click on those links. Learn more. We are lifelong learners here. So, you mentioned you come from a musical family. Do you still writing music? Do you find time to, you know, to I don't know, like
Um, yeah, my mom and dad both were. My mom was a singer. My dad played guitar a lot and ukulele and sang. And today, my traditional instrument is a piano, but I actually don't have one right now. So it's been a lot of ukulele and guitar. I still try to play a lot. Songwriting, not so much these days. My new passion is really just learning Pacific Island songs and then trying to master those. So it's finding Tongan and Hawaiian and Samoan and Maori songs and then trying to learn them and then figure out those, oceanic strum patterns, because those patterns are hard to play, getting that rhythm right. And so for me, it's a lot more of that these days.
And who are some of your musical influences? Obviously, mum and dad. Are there any other Indigenous folks or musicians, artists, or Polynesian that you?
Growing up,
You know?
my dad was into like a lot of like funk and stuff like that. And my mom was
Mm,
more into the Hawaiian stuff. But it was a lot of reggae in the house. So it was a lot of Lucky Dubé and Steel
mm,
Pulse, and, Marley's. But then I went through my whole like music phase of performing, and so it was like a lot of American acts.
mm,
But nowadays, yeah, I'm starting to find like my route back to growing up around Hawaiian musicians like Kaylee Irachel, Hapa, um, Cecilia and Capono, C&K, things like
mm.
that. Um, but Fiji was a big one for me growing up. Um, who else? Mana'o Company, some Hawaiian reggae, things like that.
One of the videos I saw on your page was about kava. The history, the importance of kava to our people. Did you get a lot of feedback or response to that video?
Um, I got more than I expected. But to be honest, it was really interesting, the feedback I got on that from different groups of people.
Mm.
Um, of course, there was a lot of, Pakeha people like, oh, I never knew, you know. Well, I've heard about it, but I've been wanting to try, and now I won't. But, one thing I found insane was there was a couple, what looked like Pacific Islanders that were like, "Why are you trying to tell our farmers that they can't go make money selling our kava?
Oh
If
my
if
God.
people aren't buying it, then they're not making money." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think you watched the video where I talk
Mm,
about how, we're finding a shortage in our regions, and now we can't even do our protocols and our cultural norms." Um, so I was actually more in awe of other, um, Pacific Islanders downing it and
mm.
getting angry with me for trying to what they would say was, gatekeep.
Oh no, I was gonna say, were they like, oh, here goes this guy with being a gatekeeper with the
Yeah,
cover.
I even had one guy call one other, I think it was a Tongan guy, call me a Polynesian Karen for it, and that was a first, but,
Man,
I
that's
stand
yeah.
behind I stand behind what I said. I think that it needs to be held at a certain level of spirituality and sacredness, and
Mm,
even when we go mix with the boys, there's still an aspect of culture that goes into that mix.
mm. I want to talk about Free West Papua. I just think it's so important to just keep bringing this up. Free West Papua is something that you also speak on. Um, do a lot of people know about what's happening in West Papua, the plight of the genocide and the plight of the West Papuans from where you are, or do a lot of people know about it or not really?
I'd say it's pretty 50-50. I think people understand that there's an issue maybe happening, but that's about all they know. They don't
Mm,
know of the atrocities happening there, of
mm,
human rights issues. Um, but to be honest, I don't know if where you guys were there was that big Coney 2012 movement, but like in America, when there was this huge issue going on in Africa,
mm,
everybody and their mom was like, "Coney 2012, Coney is this, brutal dictator, blah 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 blah." Everybody
mm,
cared for like 3 months, and then it's just like nobody talked about it ever again. And I feel like that's West Papua here. People were like,
mm,
what's going on is wrong, and then like the next day, like nobody cared, and so
mm,
it's just this sad ongoing issue where I feel like, there's a clear racial divide in American media, and if your complexion is too dark, then you just kind of get shut out of modern media in this region. Um, and so nobody cares to talk about it. Nobody cares to watch it. And that was one of the videos that like I wanted to go viral. I wanted
mm,
that video to boom. And when I saw that it was like barely at, 1,000 plays after X amount of time, months or weeks, it was honestly devastating because it's something that people need to be sharing. It's something that people
mm.
be aware of, especially here because I couldn't tell you how many people I personally know that are like vacationing in Bali.
Oh my gosh, me, I have issues about that. I'm sorry,
I'm like,
but I do.
supporting, this colonial monster that's pushing this injustice,
Mm,
but they don't, and to them it's not an issue. Um, but we're seeing the same thing here, literally as we speak.
mm,
With Haiti, as Haiti's literally in disarray right now, and America doesn't even portray what's happening there on our news.
mm,
They just turn a blind eye because, again, there's too much melanin happening over there, and the skin tone isn't the right one to get viewers. So
mm.
if we're not raising awareness, then who is? But it looks like people don't even care to watch my videos.
Yeah.
Topic. Thing with Papua, that's something, I've been talking about West Papua for over 7, maybe 8 years now.
Mm,
And at first, people were like, "Shut up," like literally, like, "Shut up, you don't even know what you're talking about." And then it was, "You're still talking about that?" And now it's, "Dude, that's old news. Stop talking about
mm,
that." I'm just like, "Well, old news is still happening." And so,
mm.
yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. So you say teaching is a form of activism. Uh, I mean, I read the Teaching America articles, and actually I stole that line from there. Teaching is a form of activism, but I feel like you as an educator, that is what you do. So I wanted to talk about your classroom. How do you, what does it look like? When we're thinking about equity in the learning space, and how do you bring in this passion for advocacy and empowerment, and how do you bring that into your classroom in terms of the setup and what it looks like, creating that really brave space for your learners to just be able to express and learn as they need, as they as they do.
You know, I feel like if somebody were to take my classroom and sit it in Florida right now, I would be in jail.
Eh? Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
For the people that aren't from America, the United States, a lot of those southern states have been cracking down on like cultural classes, like CRT type stuff, critical race theory,
Right.
banning books, banning flags and anything that's not the American
Ah,
flag in spaces. And I genuinely would tell you, I would probably be in jail right now if I taught in Texas or Florida. So you walk
man.
into my classroom, and the first thing you see is a giant flag that says it has the Hawaiian Iolani Palace, the palace behind it, and written
Mm.
across the front in graffiti, it says "Land Back." Um, and then
Yes.
Land Back, and then all my windows are covered with flags of oceanic nations.
Mm,
So draped down across all the windows are different Pacific Island flags. Um, and then around the top of my room, um, I have a wall of just Hawaiian royals across the wall. And then the other side, across the chalkboard, is brown and indigenous leaders and activists that I find inspiring. And so, you got everybody up there from Malcolm X to Rosa Parks to, um, Native American chiefs to Maori chiefs that, helped in the Maori Wars to, you know, Hawaiian activists that fought for, the military deoccupation. And it's inspiring to see their faces looking out every day at the kids, and every day I'll point at them and I'll explain who these people are, like not all of them, but in the middle of a story, if it comes up to a certain topic, I'll be like, see this right here, this pertains to that guy over there, and they're like, wait, how? And then I explain, like, that's Delaney's, and he liberated Haiti, and the kids are like, wait, what did he do? And I'm like, yeah, he's holding a head of a Frenchman, like he's
mm,
literally decapitated a Frenchman, and he's holding his head, and that picture depicts them being triumphant over the French slave owners of them, and how liberating that was. And for the kids to see those things and put two and two together, that like that's how America acquired the Louisiana Purchase. And you know holy crap, like it all kind of falls into place. And so when you walk into my room, like there's deoccupy Hawaii posters, there's
mm,
decolonize Hawaii posters, there's Red Hill posters of drain the tanks, and um, you know signs for Aloha Aina, which is caring for the
mm,
land, and protect Mauna Kea, things like that.
mm.
It's
Man, I love it. Are you able to take your students on class trips? Like, I'm curious. Like, what does a class trip look like? I mean, obviously, I don't know if you still have COVID restrictions there. I'm not too sure,
um,
but
we're just coming out of COVID, and so we're now just barely getting back into the whole like norm of field trips.
mm,
Um, we've only gone on one this year so far, but I will say of the trips we could have gone on, it was probably the most awesome. Um,
mm,
we just celebrated the 130, not celebrate. That's the wrong word. Let me
mm,
rephrase that. We just acknowledged
mm,
130-year anniversary of the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And so I took my kids down to the Royal Mausoleum, and then along with another 4,000 Hawaiians, we
mm.
marched to the Capitol and the Royal Palace. Um, and
Wow.
that was just such a huge thing. I prepped them for 2 weeks, and the whole 2 weeks, every time they had me, we just did nothing but songs of liberation and songs of protest in Hawaiian, and chants. And then we got down there, and the whole walk for an hour and a half, 2 hours, we did nothing but sing and chant
Mm.
about the overthrow.
That's so powerful, man. Man, the classroom can be any setting. That is so powerful.
Yeah,
Oh.
it was really cool. And then after I had them write reflections, and reading their reflections was probably the coolest part, because I think a lot of the kids just realized like how special and unique it was to be there and feel
Mm.
that mana in that space, and just understand who they are as Hawaiians, as like,
Mm.
90% of my kids are native Hawaiian, and for them to just kind of come together culturally as a lahui, just one unit of people, was massively liberating and powerful for a lot of the kids. So
Mm.
it was cool to
You,
see.
every time I hear critical race theory, uh, when I read news on that, when I hear or see videos, I just, I'm always just so shocked that there are parents out there saying to ban books and not to teach this and not to teach like like that is America. I'm sorry. I mean, it's just so mind blowing to me.
Right,
Like,
you're absolutely right. And I mean, New Zealand has a lot of those issues too,
oh yeah,
They try to they the culture there really tried to suppress a lot of
mm,
indigenous history too,
mm,
downplay things like the Dawn Raids and such,
mm,
the Maori Wars, and
absolutely.
try to whitewash the Waitangi tribe,
Mm,
treaties and such. And so, in a sense, over there, they have similar issues.
mm,
I think in America, it's just exacerbated to this level of national news, and it's honestly insanity, the things that they try to suppress and they try to hide, because
mm,
sometimes it's really basic, basic information, and they try to tell you that you can't tell a kid that, or teach a kid that, you know, that redlining happened where they weren't selling houses to African Americans and brown people. And it's like, well, that did happen. Like it's fact.
mm,
I think if you have time, you should read Donald Trump's new address of his plight to try to get reelected, of all the things that he's going to try to ban and such. It is literally insane, like insane. So
I
I
can't.
posted, and I got a little backlash because I posted on my story, and I probably should have chose my words a little better, but I pretty much just said "F you, Donald Trump," and tagged him. But my kids will learn the truth regardless.
I just, yeah, man,
It-
it's scary. Like being outside and looking in, that kind of stuff is really scary. Like
it
knowing that
is,
America is a superpower and the reach it has, but
right?
even the media, oh,
That
I
cultural
mean,
support, it's just it's a suppression,
mm,
and it's just trying to blanket everything in this guild
mm,
of it happened, but it's the past, and we need to move forward. You know,
mm,
um, and we see that with almost every colonial nation. Canada just this week did something similar, where they literally told indigenous tribes of the region that they're not going to give them any reciprocities or any money back for breaking treaties from 1850s era. And they said, well, why won't you give us money back? And they said, because look at all the progress we did for you. The billions of dollars of infrastructure we gave you far surpasses any kind of money we could give you. And that makes me laugh, and it makes me think, like, well, like, look at Hawaii. We didn't
mm,
want this. We didn't want these trains. We didn't want these freeways. We didn't want these high rises. We didn't want this infrastructure. We wanted land that we could farm from the ocean to the mountain.
mm,
We wanted taro farms cascading down to the waters. Like, progress for who, right?
mm,
Progress for yourselves, not for us. And so, that's the mindset.
mm.
I see a lot here.
How do you look after yourself? Obviously, as an educator, it can be busy. You've got family. So, how do you uh, disconnect and just, take time to.
I mean, I'll be real. My school being Hawaiian Hogwarts, like, I went multiple years before here of going gray, and
Mm,
you know it was stressful, and I honestly, I drank my way through it before
mm,
the school. I would just drink whiskey and grade, or drink whiskey and write, lesson plans. And now, like, I don't even touch alcohol. I don't even have to. I'm just happy.
You're
Um,
loving it. You're
Free time. I have
mm,
free will over my curriculum. They trust in me, and I my free time is my free time. I spent my
mm,
morning reading a book the whole time, and I didn't have to worry about having curriculum in by Friday or Monday morning, and
mm,
I can't even complain. I'm finally in a position where in my teaching career, I don't have
mm.
to stress, and I don't have to lose sleep.
That's so cool. Advice for other teachers on how to take care of themselves?
Um, how to take care of yourself? You're
Mm.
replaceable,
Oh,
and
yeah.
realize that. Um, any day you get let go, and they'll find somebody to fill your position the next day. So don't take anything too seriously. Don't overthink things. Don't stay up late lesson planning.
Mm.
Don't stay up late grading. Be smarter, not harder. Create
Ooh.
Google Classroom assignments that grade themselves. Make the kids grade their books, grade each other's books, and then you just input the scores. Um, it's things like that.
Mm.
It's utilizing Google Docs to make corrections on their paper, so you're not packing around these huge essays and leaving comments on them, so that you can keep a tab of when they even checked it to see if they addressed the issues that you're
Mm.
putting out there. And then lastly, trust the process. Lessons, sometimes you put hours into a thought, an idea, and you're so stoked on it, and then you let it go and realize, holy crap, that sucked, and that just tanked. And you can't like dwell on it. You just
Mm.
have to wake up the next day and hope the next day's lesson is fire. Because if you sit there and dwell on, like, damn, I spent like 10 hours on that lesson and it just tanked, um the kid, it's not worth losing sleep on. The kids probably
Mm.
didn't even notice that it was a bad lesson.
Mm.
um and then trust your gut, stand your ground. Another big thing in America, if you're an American educator, do your curriculum on your Google Drive, and then
Mm.
figure out how to share it from there, so that you own the rights to it and not your educational institute.
Mm.
Because a lot of times, if you do it on their software and their Google Spaces, they'll own the rights to it, and you can't take it with you to another school.
Mm. I've heard that. Have you ever thought about writing a book?
No. So
No.
funny as crap, because I've been an English teacher multiple times.
Mm.
Um, I, despite having gone to grad school and such, I am a poor writer. I think my dyslexia comes into play too
Mm.
much. I jump from tangent to tangent and thought to thought. I feel like if anybody read my book, they'd be like, "This man is all over the place."
Well, if a book was written about you, what would it be called, do you think?
What would it be called? I honestly, something like not even like the underdog. I would say the unimaginable future. Because
Mm.
if you told me 10 years ago that this is where I'd be, I would tell you, I would laugh in your face. 10 years
Mm.
ago, I was partying, I was recording music. I I thought college was dumb. You know what I mean? I didn't think anything of higher education. I didn't think I was cut out for it. I remember I had Facebook posts where I would be like, "I'm never going to college. I am, and I don't need to read books. I just need to play music." And here I am 10 years later, literally, read more books, get an education, even if it's,
Mm.
how to be a plumber, how to be, an electrician. Just do something with yourself. And, I just, life has funny ways.
It does, right? It does. And do you have a book recommendation, or maybe a book that you read with your daughter, or
Um,
anything that you want to put out there?
Man, there's too dang many. There's too
Yeah.
many.
Favorite?
My favorite book by Pacific Islanders, I will go with, it's a Tahitian book translated from, I believe, French to English.
Mm.
It's called The Missing King.
Ooh, okay.
It's crazy. It's a wild story. It jumps all over the place. You really have to engulf yourself in it, but beautiful story, beautiful insight into Marquesian and Tahitian culture, and just what a wild ride that book is. Potiki, always, I love
Oh,
Potiki.
yes.
When I teach that, I teach a whole unit around Maui and the Oceania and his different roles through all of us. And I love teaching Potiki because then I can teach about how a lot of us believe Maui was a real being and explain the story of him as a master navigator. So that's always a fun way to do it. More modern times, my daughter, she just reads whatever. She just loves any kind of kids book. What am I reading right now? How do I back out on this? I'm reading a really cool book at the moment. If I can figure out how to back out on my Kindle, but I'm really incompetent with technology. Sorry, I don't think I can get out. But
It's
maybe.
okay.
The Great Escape. And so I didn't realize that I was into nonfiction until recently. I always read like these fictional stories of the Pacific, and I thought my genre was oceanic things. But I'm reading right now this book called The Great Escape, a true story of forced labor and immigrant dreams in America. It's like literally blowing my mind as it's going massively into detail about kind of what we would really consider modern slavery that happened, in the last 15 years, 20 years to people from India being brought over to America to work here and how corrupt it was, and again, I never thought I would really be into that kind of book, but holy crap, it's so entertaining. Put it down.
Well, thank you so much for the book recommendations. As we wrap up the podcast, I'll give you a moment to just kind of wrap it up with some final words of wisdom, encouragement, inspiration. Before we do that, bro, Kiliona, thank you so much for coming through today. So many gems shared. Man, it's been such an honor to have you on here sharing a bit of your journey, especially as an educator. I love getting educators on the show because everyone has a journey. I love that you just stumbled into education, into becoming a teacher. That is a story in itself. So thank you for coming into the space. Yeah, it's been really inspiring, and I just want to wish you and your family, all the best. 2023. It's February now. We're in the second month of the year. Time is flying by. All the best with the remainder of the school year. I know we're all counting down to summer break. People who say they're not are lying. You're lying. We are counting down for real. So spring break first and then summer. So all the best on that. Wishing you and your school, well wishes for the rest of the year, and to your family. Stay safe out there and keep inspiring, advocating, and doing what you do. I love your work. Inspirational, bro.
Malo. Yeah, appreciate you having me on, honestly, and for even doing this. It's such an awesome thing for our people to be putting, things like this together. So, model for the hard work that you do of making this possible. Last minute things. Let's see. Always follow your na'au, follow your gut of where things lead you as Pacific Islanders and Indigenous people. We know that when our body speaks to us and our ancestors speak to us, that you should always listen. And I think that's what's guided me to the place I am now and where I am and the things I'm moving forward with. For my Indigenous people living in the diaspora, my biggest thing for you guys is come home. We need you here more than the States need you or Australia needs you. You can spend your time abroad, but for a lot of us, I think coming home and re-indigenizing our spaces, especially places like Hawaii, is so important as we find ourselves being more and more the minority than the majority. We need to bring our people back and reteach them how to be Hawaiian and how to be Maori and how to be Tongan, how to be Samoan. And, there's always work for our people here, and there's always a space for our people here. If I can do it, you can do it, because I moved here with $600 in my pocket and made it work for me. I think anybody can do the same wherever they are. If they want to be home, they can make the possibility of making that a reality. But again, I appreciate you having me on today.